Hello, everyone, and welcome to our course, Augmented Reality and the Future of Work, with Robert Scoble and Shell Israel. So I'd like to introduce Robert and Shell.
Hey, this is Robert Scoble, and Shell's sitting with me as well.
Hi.
Yeah, this is a heavy morning for us because Shell and I were recently on NetApp's private jet getting a ride home from a conference, and their conference was supposed to start this morning at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. So our thoughts are with them this morning and the other people involved and hurt by this tragic, senseless violence. We just want to start out with a little moment of silence for them. All right, Shell. So should we kick this off? And
welcome everyone to Robert and Shell's first ever online class. It isn't our first rodeo, as most of you know. We've been researching, writing, and talking about augmented reality and the future of work for well over 2 years. You could argue 4 years. But let's get started. Robert?
First of all, there is no video for this course. It's audio only, and we're doing that to make sure that everybody can see the course. But Shell and I are here.
we are here, and there will be a video of this presentation.
Or a recording.
A recording,
yes.
A video recording of these, what is it?
Of these slides, yeah.
There will be a recording of these slides available shortly after we're done speaking. If you're in this classroom, that will be free. Robert, let's get started.
Yeah. So the first slide is of Thyssen, and they're using augmented reality to help elevator repair people figure out their job for the day, and also figure out how to do their work on top of the machines. And that's the promise of augmented reality and how work is going to change. Over the next 2 hours, Shell and I are going to go into some depth on a number of different companies using augmented reality. So let's dive in. This is your Shell.
Okay. The structure of this course, which I guess this is the housekeeping part, is there are 4 basic sections. First, Robert's going to take you through the basics, including the terms, what you really need to know to have any kind of deep conversation about immersive technologies. Second, we're going to look at a lot of use cases on the consumer-facing side. Part 3 we call the enterprise, but it involves the back end of consumer companies because every company needs to run on data, and that's part of what it's all about. Then finally, Robert and I will give you a sense of the big picture, what this is all about. Interspersed in all of this, there are 3 Q&A periods and 2 quick 5-minute breaks for email or biological reasons. And one last note, this is intended as a survey course. We're trying to give you a broad but not very deep view of everything that is going on in the hope that what we tell you today will give you ideas to make you more expert at what your work is and wherever it is.
Yeah, and Bill is trying to figure out how to turn off the beeps. Sorry about that. We're working on that as we speak, and hopefully we'll get that figured out shortly. Shell, I believe you wanted to talk about outcomes, but one thing is we'll stick around at the end of the class a little extra time, I certainly will, to make sure everybody's questions are answered and make sure you get the value out of this course that you're expecting.
Okay. Most of you have given us money to be here, and this is what we've promised previously, but I want to make it clear this is what we are trying to do today. You'll be more expert at the end of this 2.25 hour period on the general topic of AR. Just to be clear, we use AR to cover VR, MR, and all of that. So we're just going to say AR, and it's immersive technology we're talking about. We also want to give you the long view. Every day you're reading about this happened and that happened and this happened in AR Kit and AR Core. And we're trying to get a little bit above that so you understand where it is all going and how essentially transformative it is. What we hope really is that you will be able to take what we're telling you and go back to your work and tell others about what you've learned. It'll educate them, and as you do, you'll start seeing the enormous range of options available to you, whether you're in a home office or whether you are in a global corporation. And finally, I'm sorry, I think I kind of covered those two together. So, Robert, take it from there.
Somebody asked, are the slides going to be available at the end of the class? Yes, we have these slides in Google Docs or Google Slides, and we're going to send you that link at the end of the class. And we're also going to send you the recording of the class so that you can watch it again later. The slides have lots of links in them, so there's a lot of value just in the slides that you'll want to look at later. So don't feel like you're pressured to take a lot of notes on URLs or anything like that. You're going to get all that at the end of the class. All right, so where are we heading? You know, Shell and I wrote this book, Fourth Transformation, based on going around to 30 different countries and doing a lot of different research and whatnot. And we believe that over the next 5 years, we're going to see a pair of glasses evolve. This is a prototype or a vision picture from Qualcomm that gives you a sense of where we could go. Is a pair of glasses that gives you augmented reality on top of the real world. But I want to split up the market into its components right now because it'll help us have a better conversation about where we are today and how the technology will evolve over the next 2 years. For the next 2 years, augmented reality for consumers is going to be mostly mobile with AR Kit on iOS 11 and AR Core on Android. In the enterprise, you're seeing different use cases evolve because, you know, like I have a Microsoft HoloLens, and the HoloLens is 1.28 pounds and it's $3,000. Enterprise people at work, like somebody who's doing car design, is very willing to put up with that kind of pain. Consumers are not. So we expect that kind of technology will get consumerized down the road, probably over the next 5 years. But as of today, we are not with consumers on mixed reality glasses. And over the next 10 years, you're certainly going to see something like a HoloLens become consumerized and become light enough to use. So I'm going to split up the market into separate categories. And the first one, and we're going to cover virtual reality for a reason at first, because virtual reality and augmented reality are sisters, basically. And in fact, when Microsoft calls their new VR headsets mixed reality, they are trying to signal to the world that they work together. And in fact, later we're going to talk about automotive, and you'll see Ford's system. Last week at Microsoft's conference, they showed off their VR headsets and their HoloLenses working together. And that's why we need to cover this in some detail. So the VR market is split into two pieces. You have VR Lite, which is mobile phones like the Samsung phones that snap into Gear VR, or some of the new Daydream phones like the Pixel 2 that'll be announced later this week. The Pixel 2 will snap into a Daydream headset. Right now, that's 3 degrees of freedom. By the end of the year, we believe we're going to see 6 degrees of freedom. And now we're going to start throwing a lot of tech terms at you, and that's one of the reasons.
Just, Robert,
yeah.
What do you mean by degrees of freedom?
Well, degrees of freedom means that you can move around. 3 degrees of freedom means you can just move your head left, right, up, and down. 6 degrees of freedom means you can move your body around something. And augmented reality lets you move around. When you're using augmented reality on an Apple iPhone, you can actually move around a virtual thing on your table. That's 6 degrees of freedom. You need 6 degrees of freedom to do work. 3 degrees of freedom is great to watch a 360-degree video, but it's not good enough to move around a model of a CAD drawing or interact with somebody in a video conference, something like that. The high-end VR, and if we had one recommendation at the end of the class, it would be to get VR today, because it gives you a sense of where the world is going, and it lets you start building prototypes if you're going to be building them. And the high-end VR, like HTC Vive or Oculus Rift, gives you the 6 degrees of freedom so that we can move around, and it gives you controllers that are also 6 degrees of freedom, so we can grab things virtually in the air and manipulate them or throw a basketball at Shell or do something like that. AR is also split up into separate areas. So when we say AR or augmented reality, we're talking about everything from using a mobile phone, which will put virtual items on top of a table or on top of your phone floor, all the way up to a HoloLens, where you can walk around and interact with these things with your hands because you're wearing something. So let's just cover a little bit of the separate kinds of augmented reality we're going to be talking about today, so that we have a good context for the rest of the class. We're seeing mobile AR really big this year, right? iOS 11 just a week ago shipped, and in fact, I just put up a link to 40 of the best augmented reality apps on the Apple Store. But Google's coming pretty hard this year as well with AR Core, and this approach to AR is great for consumers and is really great for lightweight, short level things that you're going to hold the phone in front of the table on. It's not really great for doing a lot of hardcore work, and we'll get into why later. We're also seeing a range of glasses. Shell, I think in the book, called them smart glasses. These are things like the Google Glass or the Copen screens that I have pictured here. And these are really good for information pairs of wearables. At the Singapore airport, they just bought more than 1,000 of these kinds of glasses for their workers, so the worker could see information about things that are happening on the runway that they need to pay attention to or whatnot. These are not augmented reality. They give you a little feel of augmented reality. Maybe the visual is overlaid, but they really don't change the world very much. They are important to discuss, though, because they can do quite a bit. At Boeing, they're using glasses like this to do the wiring harnesses in the wings, and they're using it to track all of the different wires. There's thousands of wires in the wing, and the worker can hold the wire up to the glass and see information about those wires and make sure that they hook them up to the right thing. We're seeing a range of lightweight AR glasses that don't have the scanning systems that the Microsoft HoloLens does, but are very useful for a wide range of things. They do put an overlay image on top of the real world, and so you can see video, or you can see CAD drawings, or you can see other information in front of you, but they're not, they're different than the HoloLens, and I'll get into why in a second. Again, here we're using glasses that are 3'd off. They don't have the kinds of tracking that would let you walk around a virtual hologram, but they are useful for a wide range of things, from customer service to inventory to service to supply chain management. We're seeing a range of augmented reality pro glasses, and this is where the HoloLens and soon the Magic Leap comes in. HoloLens has 4 sensors on the front of the glass that see the world in 3 dimensions and build a mesh of polygons on top of the real world. And that mesh then can let a developer lay virtual items either on top of the surface of those polygons or standing on top of them, right? And this is how the HoloLens works. And if you haven't had a chance to have your face in a HoloLens, it's pretty mind-blowing, because we can already do things like play a game where aliens blow holes in your real wall. And so you can see, you're looking at your real wall, and you can see cracks in the walls, and you can see a hole, and you can walk up to the hole in the wall and look inside of it. It's really pretty mind-blowing. This is why Microsoft calls it mixed reality, because it really is mixing the virtual and the real world together and changing it. These are really great for architects and designers and builders, and it does everything that the other glasses do. It does, it lets you display all sorts of information in front of you. The problem is that it's heavy and it's expensive. So if you're choosing to go down this route, realize that your workers probably will only like to wear them for less than an hour, and they're $3,000 a piece. So you have to budget for those when you're making your plans. We also are seeing a range of optics companies, and these are worth watching. They probably won't affect you that much, but they're interesting to know and follow, because they show you what's coming in the next 1 to 3 years. For instance, there's Loomis is the lens I'm wearing here, and that has a 720p monitor in the lens, and in a glass. This is a prototype glass that weighs about 4 or 5 ounces. This shows you that in the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to get glasses like this that are going to be pretty lightweight and pretty low cost, and low cost being under $1,000. Now, somebody was just asking Magic Leap. Magic Leap is, and I'm watching the questions. I'll get to some of the questions second.
Yeah, we have after your section, we have a Q&A period.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry.
And Bill will direct us.
Magic Leap gives you some new things over HoloLens. First, it gives you eye sensors. Second, there's more cameras on the front of the glass, or better cameras, so that the room lock that it experiences, and we're going to get into a lot of nerdy terms that I wish I had some video to show you. Room lock means that you can, when you're walking around your room, the virtual items are better locked to the floor or the table that you're in front of, or the walls or whatnot. You're getting a sense of why that's important when you're playing with ARKit on an Apple iPhone, because when you're looking at a video game on your table, as you move the phone around the table, you'll see things sometimes jitter or move, because the phone wasn't able to see the table in detail, or the lights weren't turned on well enough, or something went haywire. So the better that system is, the more realistic it is, and the better it overlays the virtual on top of the real world. The difference between virtual reality and augmented reality is when we talk about traditional VR headsets like the Daydream or the Samsung Gear VR or the Oculus Rift, you are only seeing pixels. You're not seeing any real world. When you're wearing an augmented reality headset like the Microsoft HoloLens or Magic Leap that's coming, you see through the optic, you see through the virtual to the real world, and you see the virtual image laid on top of the real world, or interacting with the real world. And we believe, Shell and I believe, we've started seeing things in R&D labs that do both, right? So in 5 years or more, we're going to get a pair of glasses that does both VR and AR together. And that's why we are covering VR, so that you understand what's happening in the VR space, because the techniques to make the software for VR and for augmented reality are very similar. And in fact, you'll see a lot of things come out for VR and then be ported to AR pretty easily. We're also seeing a whole bunch of other technology terms coming, like computational photography. 12 years ago, I visited Stanford University and saw a couple nerds building a camera to see through a bush for DARPA. And that today is the not Jaunt, Lytro camera company, which is making a light field camera. And they're using computational photography to join hundreds of thousands of little micro sensors together to see the rays of light in a new way. We're also going to see computational photography used to recognize objects in your world. Shell and I have started seeing R&D projects where you aim your glasses at something. Like I was using iFluence's prototype, which now is at Google. And I just looked at my iPhone, and a menu popped off of my iPhone and said, "Oh, that's an iPhone 6S Plus," and it's $699 on Amazon. And would you like to buy it? And this was all with our eyes, right? We're going to see a new form of artificial intelligence be released over the next few years. In fact, we expect Huawei is going to show off some of this stuff in a couple of weeks at its launch of the Mate 10. They've started talking about their new artificial intelligence chips. Apple has been bragging about its Bionic chip and why you need a faster chip to do more artificial intelligence stuff. And what else? Spatial audio is important to start paying attention to in the glasses because we're moving from a world that puts media on a screen like the one you're looking at to media all around you, right? There's going to be virtual things walking all around you. And now we need to signal where to look in the world, and we're going to do that with spatial audio. In other words, audio that comes from behind you tells you, hey, you should turn around and look at something behind you. There were several questions about SLAM. And
do we want to finish the part and then do the questions, or you want?
No, the questions are. I'm finishing, and just let me keep going. SLAM is simultaneous location and mapping. It's a technique that was designed for the rover on the surface of Mars because we can't tell it to turn right and have it listen to us for 12 minutes. It takes 12 minutes for a packet to get to Mars. And SLAM is the same way that ARKit and ARCore and all the augmented reality stuff is going to work. It sees the world around you in 3D, and it lets us put a virtual thing on top of that world. There's companies, I just met with one company, a stealth company last week, who's building a new SLAM map for the world. And in fact, this technique is being used by robotics and by self-driving cars as well. And this is the foundational level stuff of how augmented reality will work in the near future. We're going to talk about eye interaction at some level. Shell and I visited with Jim Margraf, who started a company called iFluence. And we're going to get a pair of glasses that is going to use your eyes to not just pull up menus off of things, but I saw another company last week where you actually use your eyes to move things, virtual things around the world. It's really crazy. We're seeing new kinds of holographic displays like the Red Phone. The Red Phone, if you have it, as long as you can see the surface of the screen, you will see an image that's in 3D, both below the screen and above the screen. It's pretty amazing. And we're seeing all sorts of augmented reality ideas cooking in the lab for ski goggles and motorcycle helmets. We're also seeing some ideas of how to use augmented reality without glasses. For instance, using a projector on the table in front of you that would project a hologram, or a cave. I think those are further away, and I don't think they're going to be as useful with some exceptions as glasses or as the full-on lenses like Microsoft HoloLens. We're not going to cover a lot of the tools here, but we are going to link to some that are important. Unity is the development environment that most developers are using to build virtual reality and augmented reality. It's a game engine, so it comes out of the gaming world. And It's a tool that lets you design things in 3D. So you can build a box that's in 3D, and then you can walk around the box, and then you can script the box. Like if you click the box, what would happen? And C# is the language underneath that. It's fairly nerdy, and we assume that most of you are not programmers and most of you are business decision makers, but you should know a little bit about the tools so that if you need to hire developers, you need to know what kind of developer you're going to need to hire. And you're certainly going to need to hire somebody who has some Unity experience or something like that. There are tools coming for us, for the business decision makers, like Beyond. Beyond is a tool that lets us it's a content management tool that lets us do things like put a virtual TV screen in our view and hook that up to a TV feed. And that process does not take code. And that process is something that a lot of our brands are going to need. Another one that I just saw last week is Spatial Stories. Spatial Stories is today is a plugin to Unity that lets us do a lot of things visually without code. And so if you have a little bit of graphic design experience, you probably can use Spatial Stories. And when you get these slides, there's a link to the video I did last week so you can see that. Sketchfab is another system that you will probably want to start playing around with. Sketchfab is a database of 3D objects and scenes and fun stuff. And they just came out with an app for Apple's AR kit so that you can start playing with 3D things in Sketchfab, download them, see them on the table in front of you, and walk around them, and then start dreaming about how you might use those objects in your own projects. And if you start commissioning your own graphic designers to build 3D objects or 3D scenes, you can share those things with other people on Sketchfab. So I think that takes us to the Q&A for this section.
Bill, are there any questions that we missed?
Yeah, there are quite a few. In fact, here's one that's sort of a foundational question. What's the difference between AR and VR?
I think we covered that, but again, AR, you're seeing a virtual image on top of the real world. You're seeing the real world, where VR, you're only seeing pixels.
Just to expand on that a little bit, in terms of use cases, VR is used by gamers a whole lot. In business, we're seeing two places where it's important. One is in training. We'll get to that in a little while. And the other is in medical, and we will cover that in the next section.
Yeah. And do we believe in web VR? I do, but it's a little bit behind the proprietary system. So today, to play augmented reality on your iPhone, for instance, you need to upgrade your phone to iOS 11, and you need to have a decently modern phone. You have to have a phone that was made in the last 2 years.
Josh Nelson has been hitting me with questions all weekend. Here he has another one.
Well, let me talk about Web AR first. To load functionality into your phone, you need to download an app. Or if you're a business person and you want to build a virtual shopping mall or something like that, you have to make an app and deliver that. That process is not all that nice for your customers, right? If I'm walking into a shopping mall with my phone, do I want to sit there and download an app just to walk into the shopping mall and get a blue line on the floor taking me to the blue jeans? No. I want the phone just to instantly load up the shopping mall functionality when I walk into the shopping mall. And that process is going to be delivered through Web AR. Also, if you're in the adult industry, you're not going to be able to distribute your apps on the Apple App Store because Apple ain't going to let you do that. So you're going to have to wait for Web AR to deliver that kind of functionality as well. And we're going to see that evolve. I linked to Web AR so you can start building relationships with those guys and watching it. Right now it's behind by 6 months or a year behind ARKit. And it doesn't do as much. This is the problem. This is why we have apps and web pages, right? Web pages are easier to get to for your customers, but they don't do as much as apps. And so you're going to have, as a business, you're going to have to figure out where on that border you're going to be and how good is the state of the art. And the state of the art is going to be different on Android and on Apple's devices and whatnot. But let's get back to Josh's question.
Yeah.
Can a first-year software engineer jump right into Unity, or are there other foundational languages needed to support that study? When you get into Unity, let's say you're coming from Visual Studio or a Java programmer, the programming language underneath Unity is C#. It's very similar to Java. And so you might take a couple weeks to get proficient at it, but it won't be a hard language to learn for you if you know Java. If you don't know Java at all, then you're going to have to do a lot of work and figure out how to use Java. So, I don't know if you're a programmer or not, you'll find out. You need to learn how to think in 3D, and that is a little bit of a mind shift for programmers who are used to putting stuff on the screen in 2D. You need to think in a different way, and that's why we recommend getting VR, because that helps you understand how to think in 3D and how other developers are developing interaction models for you in 3D.
Maybe you do one more question, and then we'll do the rest at the end if we can.
Pick one here. What we're going to cover designers, architects, and urban planners later.
We're going to cover from Rick the question about industries. We're going to cover that.
What industries do we see driving AR in the next 5 years? We're going to get into that over the course of the next 2 hours. Content down to user. Samir says that getting content down to users requires large-ish downloads today. Do we expect the industry will move to a streaming model? Yes, at some point we will. And also, over the next few years, we're going to get 5G and we're going to get better bandwidth. But this is a problem, and this is why AR is not appropriate for all things yet. You're going to have to decide based on your business and what your business goals are, is AR appropriate for you, and it is not appropriate. GG asks, is this visual only or audio? This presentation is audio with slides today. We are going to experiment with using video, but we just weren't able to make it work consistently enough to use video.
There are people all over the world, some of them and sitting in airports too. So some of them just don't have the bandwidth to do it, and we didn't want to take the risk.
Yeah.
So moving on, any questions we haven't answered, we will try to answer. After this is over, you can email the questions to me. My email is on the last slide, and we'll answer them over the next few days. If they're technical, Robert will handle them. If they're business-oriented, that's my purview. We're coming into my purview now.
Yeah.
Robert, as just demonstrated, is the tech partner. He goes all over the world. He's been on. One minute, Robert.
I just saw a follow-up to Gigi's question. Sorry. The question is augmented audio versus augmented visuals coming. You are getting augmented audio headphones. Those are different than what we're covering here. The augmented reality headsets that we're getting have spatial audio built into them. That's how Microsoft HoloLens, for instance, works. And it can put sound behind you or to the right of you or in front of you. And you're going to need to learn to use those techniques to direct your viewers' attention around. Now, let's go back into Shell. Sorry.
Let me start over. Robert is the technical partner. He travels all over the world all of the time. He gets to see the coolest, most provocative technology long before most of us do. When I join shows like CES, I end up in back rooms where nobody on the floor ever sees what's going on. But a year or two later, you see them being important technologies. I'm more interested in the business side of it. Some of the terms, Robert, can we stay on the slide that I was on? Can we stay on the slide I was just on? Thank you. Um, some of some of the cases that Robert saw 2 years ago now become business use cases where people can. What I'm trying to do in this section is let you understand what business is already doing with it. It may not be your business, but the technology you see is a little redundant because it can be used just about everywhere. It can be used if you're a guy in a home office or a woman in a home office or in a global corporation. It can be used if you're in Silicon Valley or Bangladesh. Um, on this slide, thank you. On this slide, you're looking at a virtual mirror where someone in a store is holding up clothes, and you'll see she's not wearing that sweater, but in the mirror she is. And we'll get to just who that is and how that worked. Okay. The number one use, according to IDC, of consumer applications is product showcasing. And that product can be a Porsche, as we'll show you, or it can be a Coke machine. I think we're looking at a German Coke machine there. At least that's the closest I can recognize the language. We have friends in Germany who can verify that.
Ich spreche kein Deutsch.
But all over the world, AR is starting to change the user experience by letting people see and enjoy things that are not there in Pokemon fashion. When you go down the street, for better or worse, you're going to start seeing this. When you're in a supermarket, you're going to start seeing it. The number one return on product showcasing is you're enhancing customer experience. These words are religious words to most retailers and and brand and global brands, because the better the experience someone has with your product, the more they're going to talk about it, the more loyal they're going to be, and the more difficult it is for annoying banners and pop-ups that offer them a little discount.
I'm just letting you know, Tony.
I know. I've got it covered, okay?
Cool.
I forgot where I was. Okay.
So why don't
Let's
we
move
dive
on
into-
to the next slide.
Yeah.
IKEA is the leader of a growing and interesting pack. It has been doing augmented reality with people going into the stores, taking pictures, then being able to see what they look like in their living room. Furniture is, for some reason, a retail category right now that is booming. So IKEA is the lead. This is IKEA Place that you're seeing there, and they're having some fun. The video works when you get the slides. Behind them, we have other players. Target is kind of shaky, but it's there. Wayfair Furniture has come in, and now Amazon, who just got into brick and mortar in a big way with groceries, are going to open augmented reality furniture stores starting. They haven't announced it yet, but I understand it'll be in the first half of next year. The Gap was who you looked at. They're creating virtual mannequins and virtual dressing rooms where you can look at a mannequin, hold up your phone, and see yourself in that clothing. You can also have, they call it a virtual dressing room in other places, where you're trying on clothes that are still on the mannequin. If you want to buy it, you can purchase by just clicking on an iPhone app, and that's going to be the way a lot of retailing works in the future. Burberry did an interesting one very recently. This is running currently. You're looking at a modern ad in, I forgot, a very high fashion magazine. And if you hold up a blipper, that's a phone application that does AR renderings of things that you're seeing as you walk down the street. If you hold up blipper, you see this ad as it looked 100 years ago, the year that Burberry started. It goes into retro, and again, this is live when you do it when you get to play with our deck. Robert, why don't you talk about Sephora for a minute?
Yeah, and Julie asked a question that leads into this into this slide really well. Shell and I visited Sephora's R&D lab in San Francisco, and they showed us two uses of augmented reality. One was you hold the phone up to the signs in the store, and things pop off the signs and augment. Lego is using a similar technique in the Lego stores. You hold a box up to a camera in the Lego store, and it shows you the model on top of the Legos. And Sephora also is using augmented reality makeup. So you can, and I tried it, you can try like pink lipstick on your face, and it looks like real pink lipstick. And in fact, it's color matched to the physical pink lipstick that you'll buy in the store. That's a really important marketing lesson for businesses, that you're going to have to think about your products and your signage and whatnot in both physical and virtual or augmented. And you're going to have to design the two to work together and match each other.
And one more way you're going to see it. Everybody knows Pokemon. Well, as I said before, Pokemon is going to be a technology that everybody gets used to fast. When you walk down the street, you're going to see an augmented guy hawking Bud Light outside a place that sells Bud Light. You're going to be on the beaches of Venice, and all of a sudden you'll see an ad for the upgraded Blade Runner. One of the points I'm trying to make is whatever you do, the technologies I just showed you are technologies that you can use to showcase things you want consumers, shoppers, customers to use. And this technology also plays into ways of things that are happening elsewhere in the world in the enterprise, where you're using the same technology to see things that aren't there. Robert?
Snap has an interesting lesson for us all. Augmented reality on iPhones makes the phone hot and kills the battery very quickly. So we believe consumers are only going to want to use augmented reality for a few minutes at a time. And you're seeing a great example of how Snap is approaching that by letting you use augmented reality a few seconds at a time to make your kids' faces look more funny or see virtual items on the world, and not go into something that's going to be an hour because your battery just won't last and your phone gets really hot.
Okay. At the end of every one of these sections, we have references so you can go back. Most of the still pictures that you've seen are actually screen grabs from YouTube. So when you're done with this course, this class, you'll be able to look at each one of these that interest you in greater depth. When you get to these pages, there's also 2 or 3 other variations that are really good. I kind of picked some of these just because of the visual qualities of them. We divided consumer differently than most people. If there's an end user involved, then it's consumer as far as we're concerned. We define medical as everything from the quantified self to major surgery. We are finding medical. For those of you who are over 40, you might remember the pain of carrying medical records in a manila folder from one doctor's office to another. Suddenly medical is red hot with innovation. We're finding AR and VR applications that help treat patients, ease pain. I'll get to that in a minute. Cure diseases that were incurable previously, and do something that might be where this is all going in the future, hack the brain. I'm going to skip the slide and just show you these to catch up a little. Case Western was introduced when HoloLens was introduced at TED last year. In this slide, you're seeing how anatomy students now learn at Case Western. Instead of having to operate on a frozen cadaver that was kept in the anatomy lab's back room, they're now using virtual reality, augmented reality. This is my preference, because if these guys graduate and operate on someone like you or someone you love, you are really going to prefer the quality of learning here than they are elsewhere, Robert.
Yeah, if you get iOS 11 on your iPhone, you can download an app called Insight Heart that does something very similar. You can actually put a virtual human on your living room floor, and you can walk up to that virtual human and walk straight into their heart. You feel their heart beating using the haptics on your iPhone, and you can walk completely around this human.
That's interesting because in our book we talked about Dusan, a French company who created a tour of the living heart for doctors on Route 128. That was the state of the art in 2015, and now 2 years later, everyday people can have the same experience. Maybe not for professional reasons, but that's how fast it's moving. From Case Western, this is not a graduate of Case Western, but Oso VR was started by a gamer in Silicon Valley who got tired of being a game developer and he went to med school, and now he's an osteopathic surgery. When he was in school, he didn't like having to deal with a cadaver once and not being able to practice for his final examination. So he started playing around with VR um, to practice. And now, as a surgeon, he has developed tools to allow osteopaths to practice before they cut into a knee or a ligament or a tendon on you. Once again, this is a whole lot better than the old cadaver practices. It's also getting into medical sales. What you're seeing here is from a company called Kapanu. On the right is what is half of a tooth showing from a patient. I won't quite come to call that a smile. And when they look in their iPhone, they will see a before and after. If they go through the dental surgery for reconstructive dental surgery, that's the nice shiny mouth they will have. I don't know what they're going to do about the 3-day beard, but they're fashionable these days. And here's Augmetics, which is a hardware company that's dealing in the same area. That cyclopic thing on the demonstrator's face is their device. And this is a device that's going to help them with spinal surgery. And then, Robert, this is one of yours, I believe.
Yeah, Sheffy is a friend of mine who I was on stage with at a conference, and he's using augmented reality to collaborate with other surgeons using this program called ATHO. And he's also using HoloLenses and even snap glasses to share his surgery with other people. And I've included a link to his videos in the slide deck.
Is that a patient in the background there?
That's him in the background talking with another surgeon, and he can pull in a virtual image of that other surgeon so they can work across university without getting in a plane and traveling and collaborate on surgery.
Okay. Reflect, a company that impresses us for a lot, has a campaign going that I wrote about in ARBW called Death to the User Manual. Literally, they mean all user manuals. Here's an example of how a medical technician will understand how to use a highly sophisticated manual. It's augmented reality. It shows what pieces go where, and it's a lot easier. No one loves a user manual. I don't have to badmouth it here. And then this is one of my favorites of all. This is a senior citizen with a terminal disease in a Toronto hospital. She is among a small group who have made a bucket list. They all have terminal diseases. They know they're not long for the world. And they tell a volunteer developer where they would like to go, what they would like to see, swim the Great Barrier Reef, go to the Taj Mahal. And then he creates a program just for each one of them. And then they get their bucket list completed without having to leave the hospital where they now reside. And then ultimately, we talked about brain hacking. Well, this is one of the best cases I know. The company is called MindMaze. It is the second best financed company that I know of in the entire technology industry after Magic Leap. It's located in Switzerland. They do two things with the same technology. One is they're developing games. That's their light end. Their high end is being used to treat Parkinson's, stroke victims, amputees who are suffering from the agony of trauma of limb loss, and they're well on their way to curing schizophrenia. They also are using it, they're among many technologies, using VR to replace opiates in surgery, particularly with young people who can dream of swimming that Great Barrier Reef again, rather than being put underneath with a drug that they might become addicted to. What is really important here, Robert earlier mentioned iFluence technology, where in the near future you're going to be moving objects around and doing stuff with your eyes. Now you're going to be with MindMaze, not now because take a look at that. This is good if a medical practice, but not for walking down the streets and shopping at Macy's. But at some point, their technology will be used to let everyday people move things around with brain waves, which I think is somewhat freaky and pretty inspiring at the same time. Once again, here are some references for you. Everything we talked about is covered here, or at least I hope it is. If we missed one, please let me know. And then next is automotive. This is another one where
We have some questions. Could we just dive in for a second?
We're going to do, okay.
How about applications dealing with mental health diseases? Yes. In fact, one of the oldest uses of VR in the government was about solving PTSD for soldiers. And that is coming true. There's several companies that are working on dealing with mental health diseases. And I think we get into it a little bit later because Pfizer calls augmented reality a drug. I met with the head of innovation over there, and they're doing research on ADHD, Alzheimer's, autism, pain, and depression. I think we go into that a little bit later. No? Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot of work going on there, and keep in touch. We're going to keep going because we're trying to get through so much stuff in 2 hours.
We're doing a shotgun blast. That's what I mean by a survey course. Automotive is another. Can we go to the slide?
Sorry.
Thank you. Automotive is another one of these categories. It's consumer and enterprise. Every single point of the way, there is AR or VR involved. The first time I ever saw AR and VR was 2009. I went to Detroit and I visited both General Motors and Ford. GM was using it so that the case I used had people all over the world looking at a coat of paint and seeing what it would look like in their environments.
Keep going.
I want to go to the next slide.
Okay. Hit next. Hit next.
At Ford, I saw collaborative computing where there was a guy up on the screen was a brake shoe, and he was in Atlanta, Georgia. On the other side of the world, there was a guy who made the axle that the brake shoe would go around. And in a third place, there was somebody who was putting the rivets together and had to calculate whether those rivets would hold the shoe on without causing unnecessary wear to the axle. And that was being done in 2009. Nowadays, it's gone a lot further. Here's a guy doing collaborative manufacturing. Go to the next slide. Here, I'll show you on this one. Okay. For consumers, here's what's called heads-up AR. There are people doing these with headsets right now, but just about every automotive engineer that I know, just bear with me. Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in.
Oh, just put your finger up. I'll say Robert in a minute, okay? Go ahead, Robert, take it.
So I visited a company in Moscow, Russia, called Wayray that's building one of these holographic windshields, and it's a film that goes up on the inside of your windshield and has several lasers that aim into it, and it builds a holographic display. It actually puts a 3D hologram about 10 feet in front of your car, laid on top of the road, and it gives you a display like this one. Shell?
In design, here's a group of people looking at what a future Porsche may look like. And in showrooms, you have virtual cars there with people being able to look at it. As this develops, if you go to the film, you'll see this car turn to red, you'll see it turn to blue, you'll see it turn to yellow. He gets inside of the car, he'll see it with white leather, he'll see different accessories. And then the showroom, Jaguar, instead of having to stack all these cars that get sold at a discount later into a showroom, they now can have one augmented reality model and let it appear in every way, shape, and form. Robert?
The Ford car, Shell and I visited Ford's R&D lab here in Silicon Valley, and they have a whole room of VR where they can work together in different locations to design cars, and that was what was going on here. Ford is using Microsoft HoloLenses to actually design the bumpers and design the car itself and work together.
And then if you don't want to go to the showroom, Porsche will put the showroom in your living room. Here's a tabletop AR version. It's done with, I forgot which headset, but you can go through every model they have and every accessory they have in the comfort of your own home. If you like it, I imagine then you tell your local showroom and they'll provide you the car exactly as you requested it. This is one more death to the, this is not a reflect one, but this is another death to the user manual. Now mechanics working on your car can have manufacturers guide them with augmented reality and how to fix your car. This will cause far fewer errors and probably save time, and that means customer money.
Hold on, people are reporting a noise. We're not doing any noise here, so you had some noise. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I heard it too. Okay, so here again are your references.
Sorry.
Okay, and finally, are there any questions right now before we go into the final part of this section?
Yeah, we do have a few questions here.
Yeah, let's take them now. Josh knows.
Applications, we talked about that already.
I saw one about code of ethics. We're going to cover that at the end of the 2 hours.
About the windshield and distraction, about the cars.
Actually, let me answer that. Hi, BL. Good to virtually see your name on a screen at least. The heads up is actually more distracting, but if you really think about it when you drive, every time you adjust the heater, the radio, whatever is down there, you're looking down from the road. This allows you to look in the road. It allows you to see what's on the road that's potentially a hazard. It gives you Waze-like information. It shows you arrows and where to turn. It'll identify another driver, which maybe could be distracting. But I also know that all the automotive people have been testing this and testing this and testing this. Technology isn't ready for everyday people, but everyone I've talked to, and I assume that's true for Robert, are convinced that the augmented windshield is a better way to go than the dashboard right now. Over at Tesla, they're eliminating dashboards altogether and giving you a single screen, which I think is in transition to nothing in the car except the comfort of your seats.
Yeah.
Robert?
Um, Regarding automotive, Reflect is a company in Germany that spun out of Mataio, which is the company that Apple bought to make ARKit, and they're one to watch. They built a system for Daimler for, I think, the last 20 years of their cars in 30 countries for firemen who are going to come upon the scene of a wreck. And they pull out a phone and aim it at the wreck, or a tablet, aim it at the wreck, and it shows them how to cut the car apart in real time. And it shows you just how deeply work is going to change. Because do you want that fireman to be paging through 100,000 papers trying to find the same thing on a stack of paper somewhere? No, you don't.
Dirk, who is their VP marketing and PR, is, one second.
Yeah.
Dirk, who is their VP marketing and VR, is listening to this, so he'll be very pleased with what you just had to say. And in fact, Reflect is the most referenced to company in this whole presentation.
Yeah. Fabian was asking about self-driving cars. We're not going to cover that too much here, but the heads-up displays that Wayray and others are making are designed to help you take over, because when we start getting self-driving cars, and we already are starting to get pieces of them, they're not going to drive everywhere all the time. They're going to need to get your attention and say, hey, take over. Plus, if you have self-driving cars, like real self-driving cars, you're not going to own a car. You're going to order that car like an Uber you or a Lyft car today. And you're going to need to see displays on the screen or in your glasses that are going to let you tell the car where to go and how to get through the front gate of your house, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. What is going on right now? I talk to a lot of corporate people, and they're looking at, well, should we look at AI? Should we look at cybersecurity, cyber money? Should we look at AR, VR? Which are the important ones for this company? What needs to be understood is all of this convergence. Robert and I have focused heavily on immersive technologies, but robots, everything else that you're looking at for the near future will be using AR, VR, will be using AI. The ultimate step in AR will be when the glasses that are in front of your face have artificial intelligence so good that they get to know you better than the person nearest and dearest to you in your life, which gets kind of a freaky way of introducing the next topic, which is marketing and communications. Marketing and communications, to me, are suddenly becoming converging. There are a lot of disciplines that are now separated, sometimes compete, sometimes working together in integrated marketing programs. But what AR is starting to do, has already started to do, is integrate PR, corporate communications, merchandising, communications, and a few other things. We showed you a product showcasing a little earlier. Now, when you see a virtual Coke machine in the middle of an aisle, I can't tell you whether that's merchandising, marketing, or advertising. I do know it's what's going to happen because it will appeal to people better than banners and pop-ups, which we'll get to in just a second. One of the coolest ones, this was one of the ones, Robert, as always with technology, is way ahead of me, but last year or the year before this, 2016, we were at South by Southwest when we saw this activations from McDonald's. They put on, it was a Vive, right, an HTC Vive. Mm-hmm. You put it on and you held up a device that used a Google application called Tilt Brush, and you painted in midair. And then McDonald's has since used this in different places. It was done by a company we partner with sometimes named Groove Jones. They've gone on to do similar projects for American Airlines, Comcast, and a few others, I think Citibank. This is just one example of marketing through user experience. You bring the kiddies to McDonald's for fast food, but now they're going to stay and they're going to be playing and they're going to be so happy they're going to need maybe another cheeseburger, another order of fries. But the longer the customer stays, the longer you spend. They're not thinking that they're getting sucked in to spend. They're thinking that they're having a good time. And the kids are enjoying themselves. Now, how many parents out there have had the joy of bringing their kids to a department store to sit on Santa Claus's lap? It's still around. The kids seem bored with it. I've watched it recently. This one you got to click on after this is over. This is a Filipino shopping center, a high-end shopping center called Bonifacio Global Village, I believe. And in it, they have a dancing AR Santa Claus. And Santa is dancing with the kids you see in front, except they're seeing themselves dancing with Santa on the screen. Now, how's that for upgrading the user experience with AR? Robert knows a lot more than Google about Facebook Spaces than I do. He's been there, done that.
Yeah.
And he's been there and done that with the owner of Service Rocket, where we're sitting right now, or the president of it.
Yeah. Facebook Spaces is the beginning of a new kind of Facebook or new kind of social system. And Mark Zuckerberg, Shell wrote in our book about what did Mark Zuckerberg see at Stanford University 3 years ago at the VR Interaction Lab that I visited last week. And it's pretty mind-blowing. And that's why he bought Oculus. But where Zuckerberg is taking Facebook is bringing it into 3D spaces. The first part of that is called Facebook Spaces. And when you're in the space, you can work with other people. You can call them in. You can view 360 videos around you. You can draw in the middle of the air and then hand that virtual thing you just created to somebody else. You can see questions coming in like we are here on a flat screen, but they come in on a virtualized screen in front of you. And it gives you a little sense of where they might go. And Facebook, by the way, is going to announce some new stuff in a couple of weeks at its developer conference. The next one is real exciting for me because I'm trying to not travel the world as much while still giving lots of speeches like this. And this might actually be the last audio speech we do. Hopefully we can start moving to doing our speeches in VR. And in fact, we did one with Philip Rosedale. Everybody that you see there is in an HTC Vive VR machine from around the world. So each audience member is from someplace else in the world. And I'm in an HTC Vive, and Philip is in a different place in an HTC Vive, even though it looks like we're on stage together. And we're in high fidelity, which is the virtual world that Philip Rosedale built. There's a few of these Facebook Spaces, Sansar from Linden Labs, which created Second Life. And Rec Room lets you play basketball with other people in a virtual space like this. It's really mind-blowing. And the reason we keep asking people to get into VR to prepare for this new world is when you see how good it is and how much presence and how much immersion you get, which are the two keywords of why VR is so magical, you really understand where the world of AR is going. And where it is going is AR is giving us the best education technology we've ever seen. Shell, why don't you tell us about Buzz Aldrin?
Yeah, for those of you who don't remember him, in the 60s, he was a very well-known astronaut. He walked on the moon. His dream now is to walk on Mars. He knows he won't, he's 83 now. He won't live long enough to get there himself, but he started selling guided tours to people who are going to go to Mars. He's using AR to do it. Robert and I saw this AR video when we were at South by Southwest this year.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
One of the things that amazed me is I stood eyeball to eyeball with Buzz, and until I got within 3 feet of him, it looked like we had eye contact. As I got closer, I realized he was staring at me like a blind man, but it came a lot further. Then the rest of this video, if you click on it, will show his guided tour of Mars. These guided tours, this is another killer app for AR and VR. You can now get immersed in places to visit before you actually go there and visit.
So we do have several questions coming up here, some good ones. For the AR webinars, how soon is that coming? I can broadcast from Facebook Spaces to you on Facebook Live, so you can watch my experience in Facebook Spaces already. So it's already starting to happen, mostly in VR so far. If you really want to be immersed, though, and work on a project with us or feel like you're in a real audience, you're going to need 6 degrees of freedom VR at minimum. And that requires like an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift. And here we're going to hit some of the problems. Let's say you have an HTC Vive and I'm using Facebook Spaces. You still can't join me because these things are siloed. So now you have to have both, and use the appropriate one for the Facebook thing and whatnot. It's early days. It's still being worked out. There were some questions about advertising. You mentioned high fidelity.
A quick answer to Paris Nesva. We are not looking at finance issues. We probably should at some point. Robert's close to some VCs. But we're not going to cover that in this talk.
We do cover Looker later on, which does give you a taste of what you could use AR for in finance. So
I read the question another way. Actually, we have a whole section coming up in a minute in the enterprise about visual display of data, which involves finance.
Nancy asked, should B2B, non-medical, non-tech, be seriously looking at AR in the next 2 to 5 years? What's the best place to start to get your toe in the AR water? The best place to start is get ARKit on your iPhone and start understanding how you might use AR on the phone. That will get you into maybe buying a VR headset where you're going to experience the real magic of VR, which is presence and immersion. And then that might get you into buying a HoloLens and really starting to think through how you might use it. It's early days. It's not for everything, though. And if you need to have something on the screen for more than 40 minutes, it's just not appropriate yet to get into this hardcore AR.
Nancy has another question. We're about to get into AR and VR in the next section. In fact, I don't know an actual user count, but there's more happening there than there is in the consumer area so far, and there's good reason for it. It was invented there, but you'll find out about that in the next section.
Sandy asked about high fidelity used Vive. Was Oculus not compatible? Oculus can use high fidelity, but for that demo, that video that we did, I had sensors on my feet and sensors on my belt and sensors in my hands. And Oculus does not have the sensor arrays yet available that the HTC Vive has. So HTC Vive is a little bit more advanced on tracking abilities so far. Craig?
I want you to answer the question that was on the last screen about what about AR advertising. I should have included advertising in the marketing section. What we showed you on the screen is advertising as far as I'm concerned. Blipper, a company that was early to the phone use of AR, will let you walk past somebody who's got a Nike swoosh on their sneaker. You click and you buy directly from Nike and have it delivered in the color of your preference and the size on record from the Nike people who are trying to get rid of the retail physical sales outlets right now.
The Budweiser guy that we had on a previous slide was in Snapchat. Snapchat just last week announced World Lenses, which is augmented reality that's not just for your face. Previously, Snapchat had most of these barfing rainbow things that you put on your face. They now can put augmented reality on the ground itself, and they're offering advertisers the ability to advertise in augmented reality to Snapchat.
Yeah, I got a little distracted on that snap screen we showed, but that was the point I was trying to make. That what they have done with Pokemon technology is to create ads that'll be wherever you go.
Yeah.
Maybe these two could be handled together, sort of equipment and headsets and.
Yeah, Julie asked, what's the VR headset to buy for the office, Mac-only users? This is a problem. The problem will be solved in the next few months, but today you need a PC with a gaming level GPU card or an NVIDIA style card. The PC I bought was $2,100. The HTC Vive was about $600 which comes with controllers and a headset that you plug into a PC. There are new standalone headsets coming in the next 6 months. Facebook is going to announce some at its Oculus Connect conference in a week or two, if I remember right. There were a couple other questions that we needed to handle real fast. People are asking, how do I get ARKit? What app should I try? I have a list of 40 apps that I just put up yesterday on my Facebook page, and I linked to it from this slide deck. By the way, I'm going to send a link to this slide deck to everybody after the class. So Shell will probably email that out to you as a thank you for attending the class, and we'll make sure you get that. There's 40 apps. To play AR on your iPhone, you need iOS 11 and you need a decently modern phone with there's some limitations. Just go to Google and search for how do you run ARKit. If you are interested in Android, that was one of the questions coming up, you need AR Core. So search Google on AR Core, and you need a Pixel or a Samsung or a couple other phones that are capable of running AR Core on Android. And there's more coming in the next month because Google is announcing a new Pixel 2 and Huawei is announcing a new Mate 10, both of which are going to run AR Core.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Oh, we're at break time.
Yeah, so let's take a 5-minute break.
If you want him to add something on at the end of the class, you're supposed to give him the link. So I don't have time to do that, but just get him the link.
I'll send it to him right now.
Okay.
And so everyone, this is Bill. It is 20 minutes. It is 17 minutes after the hour. So let's start back after the break at 23 minutes after the hour. I'm just going to put us on mute, and we'll come back then.
And I'll get you the slides.
I thought we were on mute when I said Going to say something, or do we?
All right. And hello, everyone. We are back from our break, so let's resume. I hope you're all back and had a little break. Very good.
Hi, everyone. We've been talking about consumer and touching on the enterprise. Now we're going to talk about enterprise productivity and talk about consumers a little bit. So let's begin. Oh, one other point I'd like to make, as the guy on the right there might illustrate, the stuff in the enterprise isn't sexy, it isn't fashionable, it isn't cool like the stuff that you're going to need if you're going to have people wearing glasses in the consumer world. They're more interested in issues like safety, productivity, hands-free, etc. And they have a great deal of value. If a headset saves lives and costs $3,000 a person, that's quite a deal. Some of the major players here are HoloLens, which you've heard of, ODG, which has been around since the late 90s and began with the military, Dacry, which is the hard hat with eyeglasses, a new company, RealView, which I'm going to see in a couple of weeks, which was started by the founder of Dacry, and he's moved over and started a new company. And then Meta, which is one of my emotional favorites. I like the scrappy startups. I also love their technology.
Can I just jump in here?
Yeah.
The HoloLens, so let's start splitting some of these out again, going back to the beginning of the talk. HoloLens does the best tracking of virtual things on top of the world due to its 4 sensors on it. ODG doesn't yet do tracking at all. Meta does some tracking, but it's not as good as HoloLens. But Meta has other advantages in that it has a wider field of view, and because it's tethered to a PC with a big NVIDIA card, it can put a lot more polygons into your eyes. So if you're going to do architecture or car design, you probably want to consider Meta.
So we had a question about finance, and we took 2 different interpretations of the meaning. But one piece of finance that everybody's familiar with is spreadsheets. We all use them. None of us, well, very few of us love them, especially those of us who are not number crunchers. But we found already there are 3 very interesting and very different ways of visualizing data. And it begins with a company I wrote about in my newsletter a few weeks ago. CEO of Vision is being advised by, I'm forgetting his name, but he's one of the founders of the technology industry. And they've created a plug-in to a standard Excel spreadsheet. It's designed for CEOs who sometimes have to look at columns and rows in the hundreds of thousands and really want to pull something out and get it. And they're using augmented reality to let you pull that information out and get a more immersive view of it. There's a video on it that really shows the range of what it does. Looker is one of Robert's favorites, and I think it's visually about as exciting as data can get. Robert?
Yeah, Looker's a company in Santa Cruz. It's used by Snap, Uber, Lyft, and Twilio to run their businesses. What Looker does is join the big data pools together that are streaming off of these companies, because like Uber, how many millions of rides happen a week? It's pretty extreme. And it combines those into a single user interface and a single programming language that then a decent business person could ask, like, show me the sales of East Coast versus West Coast. And they built a VR visualizer for that data so that you could walk around your data and see a new business, see a new pattern in your business. This is early days for this stuff, and I'm seeing a lot of work being done. If you visit Meta, they're starting to show prototypes of being able to code and being able to look at things in new ways. But we haven't yet seen the Microsoft Office that's in augmented reality glasses. We know it's coming. It just hasn't.
Microsoft is very big in this. So neither one of us had actually seen Virtualistics yet. We heard about it from Irina Cronin, who is a friend of ours hi Irina, who shares our passion for immersive technologies. And my knowledge is as deep as the YouTube let me be, but it was an awesome YouTube video, which you can look at. Basically, it seems to me what they're doing is taking the aspect of data collaboration and visualizing it in a VR environment. So I think it's pretty promising. I hope to get a longer and deeper look at it. Another topic, and I'm going to go through these fast, which has surprised me. It's like medical. I have spent years not seeing anything from human resources. Now there are articles saying that AR and VR is the future of every discipline in human resources. I have seen a great deal in a short period of time on recruiting, onboarding, and training. My favorite executive recruiting story is old. For those of you who are not familiar with the world champion Golden State Warriors, this is Kevin Durant. He was a free agent for OKC a year ago and was getting recruited by everybody and their owner. The Warriors took a very novel approach. It wasn't the only thing they did. They offered him millions and millions of dollars, which always helps. But they sent him a headset. It was programmed with a VR tour of San Francisco that then took him into the dressing room of the Warriors team, where Steph Curry and other players and Coach Kerr personally told Kevin why they wanted to play basketball with him. And he has stated that this is not the reason, because there was the fact of millions and millions of dollars, but it was one of the most compelling reasons to recruit him. I thought that was interesting and unique, but you may not be investing several tens of millions of dollars in one person. You may need a whole staff. And one of the hottest areas to be right now is a young, bright developer, particularly if you're good at AR and VR. Jaguar has teamed up with a hot rock all-female band called Noodle. The interesting thing about Noodle is they're AR. They don't exist in real life. They have popular songs. I am not the demographic, but I understand they're big on the charts, particularly in Britain, where they're from. She now has this video, which you can see, that offers the Noodle challenge to crack the code. And it creates a puzzle that only can be solved by a really good developer. The developers who crack the code get an interview to come join Jaguar and a $10,000 signing bonus if they come on. Let me start with Striver. Striver's around the corner. We're going to have them on probably our next training class. They began by helping Stanford University train quarterbacks by giving them VR so that they could stay at home and practice the moves of a big game. Just give me a second now. Of a big game that was played last year and avoid getting injured in practice by that 300-pound linebacker who's learning to go ahead. Do you want to add something here?
Yeah, I just played that first prototype at Stanford last week. So they took the camera up on the field during practices, actually, not even during the game, and let the quarterback visualize his plays after the play had happened, and they found that he improved a great percent and was much better mentally able to see the play happen. And this shows the power of VR in pre-visualization techniques, and that's what formed Striver, which is, right, I think, your favorite company.
It's one of the ones that I've been excited about. I'm excited about them being on the show too. Where we reconnected with them well after the book was out was when I read all about Walmart using VR to train employees, which was very interesting to me in itself. And about paragraph 14, I discovered Striver was the software being used. It turns out that the founder of Striver was at Arkansas, University of Arkansas, Razorback football, who were taking Striver software. When they met a Razorback, I think he was a fullback, who now worked at Walmart, and they started talking and says, "Wow, what do you do? Oh, that's cool. I wonder if that could help Walmart." So the end of the story is it went from training quarterbacks at Stanford to training the enemy Razorbacks, they're kind of traditional rivals, to training employees. And I talked to three people at Walmart about this. Number one, what I'm showing you here is last year's Black Friday at the San Antonio Walmart. And when you see this on the video, this is pandemonium breaking out. These are all customers. What you don't see in there are any employees, because employees look at that and says, "Yeah, I'm getting the hell out of here." And this training program begins by teaching trainees that are going to be clerks and sales associates and managers to empathize with what those customers are going through and to understand what to do to make this situation better. They also have done a year's pilot program so far, and they've discovered that those that are learning on VR, they have greater loyalty. The retention is longer. They have like mini stores. They train people, and we'll talk about this a little later. And then the people work for three weeks and say, "I don't like it here," and they leave after all that training time. But with the VR, there's an immersive experience. They too talked about getting rid of training manuals, and they also talked about the boring 2D films that will be replaced now with VR. Now we talk about the issue of recidivism. It's a real drag if you spend a lot of money training an employee who discovers that he just can't bear the job. One of the places this happens a lot is in the wonderful business of mining. I've never been in a mine, and watching this video convinces me that I never want to be. I picked this particular slide because it had the most light in it of any one. This VR is designed to tell recent recruits, they put on the VR, they get immersed in the mine for 20 minutes. And those that might not be able to stand 20 minutes in a real mine, quit then and save everybody time and money. So this is, to me, very interesting because teaching the reality of a job rather than those very pat, everybody loves everybody training films is a really smart way to go. And I don't see any other way of doing it other than immersive technology.
Do they turn the heat up to 100 degrees too, like it is in a real mine? Because that's one of the problems is that when you're underground, you're dusty, you're dirty, you're in the dark, and it's hot.
I imagine they will at some point. I don't know if they're there quite yet. So again, these are the references, and you can get the long story of the short survey we've just given you.
Take a drink.
Are there any questions that have come in there?
There are two questions. One is about metrics from Nancy.
Yeah, that almost goes back to the previous marketers.
Yep.
There are metrics that are evolving, and there's some companies that are evolving to do the metrics. We're going to watch everything in AR, particularly when we get glasses that have eye sensors. There's a reason Google bought iFluence, which has eye sensors. They want to know what consumers are looking at and how long they're looking at. If on AR kit apps, I would be looking at finger taps. I would be looking at minutes or seconds per app used. I would be looking at how likely are the users to come back, right? I already talked about that. the way I made my list this weekend is, does the app survive the first 20 seconds? Does it get me to winning, to feeling good in 20 seconds? And most apps do not. Most apps are really crappy on the first 20 seconds experience. They don't explain how to play the game. They have forms that people are being asked to fill out. All of that causes churn, and all of that should be tracked and measured by your development team.
And this is a good question considering enterprise. What about VR for a cockpit or dashboards or war rooms in a crisis? Or
F-35 pilots are trained in VR and AR. They also have a headset that you put on that makes the plane disappear while they're going at 800 miles an hour, 35,000 feet up. That application allows the pilot to see inbound coming at them in the form of a missile or a jet, and thus avoid it. And I think it might be rather disconcerting. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Disconcerting to be sitting there like this, looking down and seeing the ground beneath you 35,000 feet, but it is a really great way of training. Robert?
He's asking, Fabian's asking about war rooms. I have seen some beginnings of war rooms, and you'll have to write me on Facebook because I don't think I have that ready for you. But at one of the hacker conferences, there was a security system that lets you visualize your network by walking around it in VR. And that lets you see anomalies in the network. This was a system designed for Fortune 50 companies, so it's a fairly expensive system. But as with all technologies, it starts with the rich people and moves down to others. So
can we do one more then about the training? Because this is, what about soft skills, leadership training, and not is that going to be done in AR? Is that possible?
Yes. My son is being trained as a police officer, and he was being trained in VR for several of those kinds of things. And VR is very good at that because it gives you the immersion, which immersion means that it feels like you're in the real world, right? It feels the same, and it buys you in. I was actually at Stanford last week. They made me a black kid and are trying to retrain my brain about racism. And I was kneeling on the ground surrounded by cops, and it was very real. And my mind was freaking out similarly as if it was real, right? Obviously, I didn't have a real gun aimed at my head, but I felt like I did. And that gives you a sense of how good this is at training you. Now, AR doesn't have the ability yet to do that kind of immersion because the field of view on AR isn't the same as VR. This is why there's still a gap between VR and AR. But over the next few years, you're going to see optics evolve that gives you that kind of immersion. And so AR is going to be used for that kind of soft skill training. Certainly sexual harassment, I would expect to see come into
the police training you talked about and the training you underwent is close to what they're trying to do at Walmart, because they talked a lot about teaching clerks empathy. And maybe the police training that your son has gone through does the same thing. It teaches empathy. I think empathy is a term that has really been used in business, and I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah. Fabian, I haven't seen a complete good room yet for management decision making. I'll do some research separately. Just write me on Facebook, and we'll figure out what the latest. And I don't know why my slides just went away. Hold on a second here.
Because of the call, I think.
Yeah, frick.
All
right.
Okay.
And
ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing technical difficulties.
Sorry about
this.
Please
stand by. The white zone is for
we were on this slide,
safety and logistics.
Yeah, that's all good.
You present. All right. Sorry about that. Safety and logistics.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
So after some of that dramatic stuff, I want to stress the point that what we're seeing in the press and we're using by our choices is the sexiest stuff being done in AR and VR. A lot of it is not so exciting, not so dramatic. Robert and I are, as you may have noticed, prone to disagreement every now and then. When we were doing our book, the disagreement was over the subtitle. Robert wanted to say AR changes everything. And I said, nothing changes everything. And then every time I tried to challenge him, he had an example. So finally I said, it really is going to change everything. And I think safety and logistics, there were a few demonstrations. This is not a sexy slide, but it's a very important slide if the guy who's about to dig up your street is going to know where the water pipe and the gas pipes are before he starts digging. And it is useful. And useful very often is more important than exciting. I mentioned Dockery earlier, and we mentioned the military earlier. Here's an example of tomorrow's forward observer. He's wearing a Dockery helmet. He's on the left. On the right is a gunner. And out there is a plane that's far off, or a ship that's far off, and they have scrambling equipment so that you don't know for sure whether that's a good guy or a bad guy. But with the Dockery glasses, he can identify instantly the shape of the plane or the ship and decide whether it's friend or foe, I hope.
Daiquiri, by the way, I visited Qualcomm and they took me in the basement, and all of the pipes in the basement there have sensors in them and have pumps, and the pump data is delivered through Internet of Things to the glasses, and so you can walk around and actually see how the equipment is working. And that's where you're seeing Daiquiri really used a lot, is at oil refineries or other factories like that.
It's places where a cost isn't the important thing. What you look like isn't the important thing. Having your hands free is important. If you're climbing a line, or you're in an oil rig, or you're in a gunnery situation, having your hands free is important. Having something solid to protect you if you're doing construction work is important. And there's Dockery, and soon there's going to be a Dockery competitor. Okay.
So we didn't talk about Caterpillar, but Caterpillar's using this kind of technology to train people on how to fix $1 million tractor and how to run the mines that the tractors are being used in. So that's interesting. And you can
DHL is an example of something really boring. They've done tests. Price Waterhouse actually did the test for them, of two warehouses that are in the distribution center, of getting packages into the right truck, making the least difficult routing, the most efficient routing. They discovered over a year using AR in the dispatch room saves 8.5% over the place that uses the old-fashioned clipboard.
Craig asked a question I just want to get to before we jump into real estate. Is there a use case for VR to remotely fly, say, a drone and get the images from the drone's camera? Yes, that's already happening. DJI already showed me a VR headset that used the movable camera underneath its top-end drone, and we can already see that. There's also drones coming out of Israel that fly themselves and let you see those images in VR headsets coming in. So, yeah. And there's one more question. What about the mental health industry working with VR, AR, what companies or organizations look out for? That's another one that I would love to take up in Facebook after the class, because there are some companies building things for mental health organizations, and I'm actually going to interview one of them in a couple of weeks, so that might be something to follow up the class with.
We're planning on doing a medical class probably in January. Chrissy Yonka, another partner of ours, will join us in that because she's been studying the healthcare industry very, very closely. So that'll help. Right now, we'll do something more mundane involving where we live and work until that's all virtual space, which if you ever see our presentation, Robert has a great slide of an empty garage office suddenly being a really cool workplace with workstations. Like medical, every aspect of real estate is being changed by AR and VR. We're going to just give you a very quick survey of a few of the examples. On the table, you see a blueprint. On the phone, you see what that blueprint looks like when assembled. There are actually about 4 apps that do this already in this way. I imagine, but I haven't seen, that there are headsets that let you actually wander into a building that hasn't been existing.
Yeah.
Is there, Robert?
Autodesk software is already being used by architects and builders. Their building information management system, Revit, is being used to plan out the building process itself, all of which are going to be delivered in AR. They're going to have some announcements, I think, in middle of November at its developer conference along these lines. But people are already starting to use AR to visualize the CAD drawings, not just of buildings, but everything. And we're moving along those lines. WinLens is one of those. I found an article about WinLens being used in Australia to let architects get together in HoloLenses and see the city actually being built virtually before it's physically being built. I met the ride designer for Disneyland, and he told me that the new theme park in Shanghai, China, was completely built in VR before they actually started building it. And that way they could walk around stakeholders around the park, like these two guys are, and think about where things are, where the hamburger stand is, where the rides are, what the sight lines are, and they could argue it out like Shell and I always do. And if something was not right, they can move it around virtually for very low cost compared to building a physical model and then having to rebuild that physical model.
And very similar technologies being used to sell space. This isn't the example, but there was a 6-story building that a broker wanted to sell, so he did a HoloLens application to pre-sell the space. Got a customer. What is really ironic about the customer who moved in, took occupancy of all 6 floors, was Samsung, makers of Samsung VR Gear, which is a competitor.
One of our attendees said Craig used it to sell his house, and Remax used it.
That was one of the slides we took out because we didn't have time.
Well, let's keep going.
Besides, the time wasn't this good. This was one of the first AR kits that I really liked, and the video does better, but doing a still slide of an iPhone shot. What is going on with Solid House, a startup in, I think it's San Antonio, Texas, is that the construction crew building a house or a small building can hold up the phone while building the framework and see what the wall is supposed to look like and how the ceiling is supposed to match the floor. As he builds it in 3D, he can walk around and see exactly what's going on, and that can stop all kinds of mistakes from happening. So here are your references for property. And now we come to a Q&A. We may be caught up.
Yeah, we took a lot of questions during that section. Actually.
Okay.
Cool. That helps us catch up because we're supposed to be at 11:50 and we're at 11:50. Great.
We've got a break. Right?
This is a break. Yeah. So this is a stretch break. So
5 minutes.
We're gonna put it
I
on
need
mute.
to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. So 5-minute breaks, everyone. We're gonna come back at 59.
No,
Sorry,
55.
55 minutes after the hour. 55 minutes after the hour. All right, folks.
This thing has been doing just lead from here to the end.
All right, folks, this is Bill. We're going to come back from break now, so get ready for the last section.
Yay! Wow, it's gone fast. So we wanted to try to wrap this up and cause a conversation, and hopefully, Bridget, you're hearing us. Thank you. You're getting a sense that consumer and enterprise apps are quite different today because enterprise workers, people at companies, are more willing to wear on the face headset, wearable glasses, right, like a HoloLens or an ODG or a DAQRI. And consumers just are not yet. Consumers are not willing to pay $3,000 for a HoloLens. They're way too heavy, way too dorky, and the use cases just aren't there yet for consumer. And we think that will be true for the next 2 to 6 years. It'll take some time for the consumer glasses to get to where the enterprise is. Over the last week, I've tested 125 apps on ARKit on Apple's iOS 11, and I just wanted to talk about some of the things I learned. First of all, the bar for apps today is very low. If you had any app of any quality, you probably would rise to the top 5% of those 125 pretty quickly. And that tells me that people are not doing enough user testing. And you really do need to do a lot more user testing with AR than you did with 2D apps, because we're moving into a world where users have not experienced AR before and have not tried the interaction models that we're trying on the phones. Even shooting an alien requires you to touch the screen in a different way than we touched the screen before. And so I would say slow down a bit. You don't need to be first. You can really do some severe harm to your brands if you don't do this kind of basic user testing. The other thing is nobody's doing good marketing, and that's the industry is not doing good marketing. That's why we've only seen 1 million HTC Vives sell or less of Oculus Rift. We have not explained the magic of VR or AR to normal everyday people yet as an industry.
Actually, what we're trying to do today is to explain the magic and the promise of AR and VR to business people who are just now getting their arms around it. And the developers are the people they're probably going to be hiring, and this is very sage advice for them, is don't rush this. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but go in slowly, but go in soon is really one of the takeaways I want you to have.
Yeah. Out of those 125 apps, very few had more than 3 reviews. Now, Shell and I worked our butts up when we published our book to get 50 reviews on the first day. And we sent out 800 copies of our book to do that, and we begged our friends, and we begged anybody we met, please review our book, right? In fact, still review our book. It still helps us as authors to have more reviews. And the app developers are not doing that basic level of marketing, which means the bar is low right now. You can get noticed by Apple even if you did just a little bit of this kind of marketing work. You really need to understand AR's limitations. Let's just take iPhones. ARKit can only understand horizontal planes. And what I mean by a plane is like a table or the floor. It can't see the walls yet unless you do a lot of programming. And most of us aren't going to do that kind of level of programming. AR Core from Google is a little bit more advanced, but it still has trouble with walls and whatnot. I know that the people listening are not developers, but you need, as business people, to understand the limitations of the technology before you try to sell this to management. Because if you draw a bunch of plans where things are going to happen on walls and your technology can't see walls, you're going to look really stupid. So do some homework. There's a lot of resources that we click to, including at Apple. There's an Apple page that's written in English for not really hardcore developers that'll teach you how to do AR and what are the limitations. And be realistic about market projections. I learned this lesson the hard way because I thought Apple was going to be a lot more aggressive than it turned out being, and I turned out looking a little stupid. The projections are very big by 2022, but this next year we're going to be in an uncanny, what we call a valley of discontent, right? People are going to be bashing AR because it doesn't do a lot on mobile phones. So when you sell it to management, be realistic, and you're going to hear a lot of pushback. I went to Taylor Swift's music record label and pitched them AR, and I heard a lot of this kind of pushback, even though they were very interested in this whole topic, because they know the numbers of headsets out there aren't big enough, even with 100 million to 500 million headsets, phones out there. They know that that's not enough for them because they're interested in things that have such broad reach that they're going to be a little conservative, and you got to be willing to deal with that. We had some suggestions on getting started. Start now to keep ahead or catch up with competitors. It's really easy to innovate when you do it a little bit every day. If you wait 3 years and then Apple or Facebook or Amazon comes out with a headset and your boss is yelling at you to innovate, it's much harder and much more expensive to do it all at one time.
Yeah, this is an important point to me that I've spoken to a few companies that we really got, and they have these huge ideas. And this is a new world. In terms of product evolution, we are just now crawling out of that swamp and starting to grow legs and lungs. Find something simple that won't be damaging to your reputation and your company if it fails. Find something that doesn't take a long time to develop. Find something that you don't have to sell beyond what you're reasonably confident you can come close to accomplishing. Yeah. And if you fail, do it. Silicon Valley gets knocked a whole lot, but we're very good at learning from failure. Robert and I are very good at learning from failure.
Yeah.
And you really need to get people doing this to get them signed on, because that's how you educate. You don't educate by doing nothing but online classrooms, although I wish that would work. You need to get people to have a little stake in the game. Okay, I'm done. I, by the way, would like to give an hour on this topic.
Yeah, Maxim is asking a question, so I'm watching the question. So if people don't get AR yet, what's the story of AR that you would elevator pitch to make people excited? And to me, I've been doing this to audiences and keynotes. It's the best education technology humans have ever invented, right? We can teach somebody how to fix $1 million tractor at Caterpillar with this technology, and it's already being done. So start there. Can you educate your user in a new way? Can you get rid of manuals? Can you make the experience of going into your business better? Can you make something like that better by using this technology? And I think we have plenty of examples, both in this book, in the slide deck you're about to get. In fact, you can send the slide deck around now because we're pretty close to the end.
Okay. I want to add something too, that every time I hear about elevator pitch, I remember I came of age in Silicon Valley, and most of the buildings are two-story. But I also am reminded of something biblical, and I'm not particularly religious, and that's the guy that comes in and says, "Teach me everything you know while standing on one foot." Well, the answer was, do unto others. I forgot what that part is. The point is, you can't give the whole story of AR in one line. Literally, it makes reality better. That's the short story. What does that tell you? I don't know. We've spent close to 2 hours at this point telling you what we think you should know to see the possibility. We hope when you're done, you're going to spend a few hours looking at links, and then you'll begin to understand the surface of what's going on and the promise of what's going on. And if somebody wants to understand all this while riding on a two-story elevator, tell them, don't do anything stupid. Move on.
In the slide notes, by the way, that you just got, there's some really interesting links that I put underneath the slides as well. And every day on Facebook, I'm watching the internet for any advancement, and I keep pouring interesting use cases into Facebook. Start with the assumption that they'll say no. When you are trying to sell this stuff, you have to have a plan, and you have to have a plan for how do you get into your boss's mindset. And your boss is probably asking, how does this increase sales? In fact, we're going in to see several companies soon, and that's the first thing they ask. Can you bring us some examples where it will drive customers in our front door, or increase sales, or increase revenues? Or does it decrease costs? Does it save? In fact, Fast Finger Studios has built a HoloLens app for PACCAR, which saved them $1 billion on selling trucks, right? Can you show an example like that? You're going to be a hero, right? So if you can answer one of those two questions with AR, that's the time to do a pitch to management and start pushing this to coworkers. Shell and I love the dark side. We love watching Black Mirror, and and there's lots of places that you can get into trouble here. Privacy is one that, hell, we're arguing about Google Photos on Facebook this weekend, right? I love the new Google Photos, and I've been uploading all my 60,000 photos to it. And other people are like, I'm never going to do that because Google has a terms of service that allows them to have half rights to the photos and use my photos in places that I might not be comfortable with it being used. And certainly they're using those photos to teach the artificial intelligence, which will do all sorts of fun things. The search on Google Photos is amazing, but it does concern quite a few people in the world. And this stuff, as we see glasses come along that have 3D sensors on the front of them, this is going to be a major concern, a talking point about this. And your company is going to have to decide where it is on privacy. How is it going to protect it? How is it going to, what kind of risks are you going to take on if you're an Equifax, for instance, that gets hacked? What kind of risk are you going to have in regards to your customers' private data, and how are you going to protect that, and what stance are you going to take publicly? These are things that we need to argue out deeply, right?
Just one other question before we get to the exciting and bright topic of dark side issues. Francine, I would say everything we just showed you is only a small win so far. Every use case that we have done has not altered the world or an industry, has not changed the structure of the leaders and the followers, but it will. And it will probably, certainly in the next 5 years, I think sooner than that. I love what's going on where there are 5 major companies competing with each other in furniture, and the battlefront will be AR tools. Yeah. And I do know that IKEA is well aware that there's a pack following them, and that's motivating them to move faster.
Yeah.
Because they know that if they stand still, those other 4 will do everything they do and then something they didn't think of.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a facial recognition, a generated face, to give you an idea of how real this stuff is going to be. You're soon going to walk into an airport or a shopping mall, and a human is going to, something that looks like a human is going to greet you at the front door. And that is really freaky to a lot of people, but I've already experienced it. It's coming out of the R&D labs in the next few years. Right?
I mentioned Buzz Aldrin, that was earlier this year's State of Technology, and It's been passed dramatically since then.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There's a few other things that we should talk about. This technology was designed to really know where you are in space, or where your phone or your glasses are in space. So, you walk through a shopping mall with a Tango phone, for instance, and you can see a blue line taking you to places in the shopping mall on the floor. The reason that happens is it knows where you are precisely, really precisely. And in fact, when I'm wearing my HoloLens, if I'm quiet, it's shaking with my heartbeat. It knows my heartbeat. It knows all sorts of stuff. And this stuff is going to be freaky. Shell and I write about the freaky line, or going over the freaky line. This is going to freak out several of your percent of your user base, and you have to have an answer to that.
Well, let's talk about some of those freakinesses. I'll take the first couple. Actually, we have a funny line change there. Can you fix that, Bill? Government is stalking where you are at all times is one.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah. So let's take those first three together. It all comes down to this freaky factor. For a long time, people have been worried about the loss of privacy, and I'm kind of agnostic. I'm not much on deciding what's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm very interested in what is real. And what is real is there is a loss of privacy that has begun. It's gone further than a lot of people imagined. And with the use of AI, it's going to go a lot further. You're going to wear glasses that know where you are looking at all times. This is infinitely beyond what Google can or what Facebook can or cannot do today. It's infinitely better than Amazon that knows what you buy all the time. This will know what part of a human's anatomy you're looking at when they pass you by or when you're talking. It will know more about you than your spouse, the person that you are closest with, will know about you.
Potentially, because the battery is going to be a problem.
but the point of it is in this talk that it's going to happen, whether you want it to happen or not happen.
Yeah.
When you think that maybe government will pass laws, come on, have you looked at government lately?
Yeah. And I don't think most people, I was just in a prototype last week of eye sensor system where I actually could move virtual items in the air back and forth with my eyes. And it knows precisely where I'm looking, and it knows even the dilation of my eye. And it knows that I'm wearing the glasses because the eye sensor is looking at my retina, not just my retina, but my eye, which is a fingerprint. It's a biometric that's very unique to you.
And these two dots are connected because to be that bad, it has to be that good. And for people to use it, it's going to be that good.
Yeah.
There's a whole history of humankind. I did this in one of the books. I've written so many I forget. But it's every single time something great and important happens, there are unwanted side effects.
Yeah.
People suffer, people die. Cars, wonderful. Wasn't good for the blacksmith, though. Yeah. It wasn't good for people who would end up being killed on highways. But at the same time, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. Arthur Clarke wrote that humans are the one creature that must go beyond. And we're going to keep doing it. We do these things for the same reason the humpback whale jumps it's 10,000 tons out of the water, because it can. Go ahead, Robert.
We could argue for 2 hours just about ethics and privacy and these Black Mirror style dystopian downsides. I think for our audience, they're going to hit the technical barriers sooner. Because the phone, for instance, if you're using Apple's phone, it literally gets hot after just a minute or two of turning on an ARKit app, and the battery starts going away really fast. I went through 20% battery in 5 minutes. So those issues are also going to be dark side issues that you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have to really do some thinking through. Is AR appropriate today for your business, and can it solve a real business use, and can it help your user get to some real utility? And we wanted to get into some parting thoughts. that, AR adoption is like sitting on equator.
That's mine.
Yeah, that's yours.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
Picture yourself in a tropical paradise. You're exactly on the equator. There's a gentle breeze lufting on the palm trees over your head. In fact, you are hurtling around in a circle at the rate of 1,040 miles per hour on something called the Earth, which is going around the sun at a rate of, I think it's 16,000 miles per hour. So while to Robert and I, it looks like we aren't there yet, it hasn't happened as fast as we thought it was going to happen. What has happened is remarkably fast. It is developing remarkably fast, and it is continuing to develop remarkably fast. In tech, but elsewhere, you always talk about the high end, the steep end of the hockey stick. Right now, we're moving pretty quickly along the bottom end of the hockey stick, but by 2020, 2021, we'll be going straight up that hockey stick. Companies that are slow to change, particularly bigger companies, are going to have trouble catching up at that point. They need to do it now.
Yeah, and you need to understand how these new spatial computing mechanisms, whether you call them immersive computing or XR or AR, VR, are changing how we're going to interact with our customers and how we're going to design things. And you got to understand the trends that are going to hit. And I think, the new Tesla Model 3 is a good example of that. No buttons in the dash, right? They're getting rid of physical interfaces because Elon knows we're heading toward a world of glasses. And by the way, so do their competitors. I talked to the CEO of Mercedes at South by Southwest this year, and he says, I'm investing in glasses because I know people are going to wear glasses when they're driving a Mercedes. And they're going to look through screens, and they're going to want to see holographic information through those screens, right? So the world is changing quickly, and we're getting a little tiny taste of it with our iPhones just in the last couple of weeks. Amazon's rumored to be bringing out glasses of some kind next year. I know some developers working on them. So this stuff is going to start happening, and if you're prepared for it, like you are, because you're thinking about it at least to the level of coming to our class, and we really appreciate that, then you're going to be way ahead of people who aren't even thinking about this yet.
To wrap it up,
yeah.
I'd like to go to the very beginning of this journey for us. The book that we're shamelessly plugging on our very last slide began by using the biblical words in the beginning. In the beginning, there were mainframes, and then the world really changed because they got to personal computers, and there were knowledge workers, and that was really fine, but most of us didn't have computers. But then there was another change that came, and that was to being able to point and click, and then everybody could use a computer, and it got into the homes. In the third transformation, we got to smartphones, and that's where we are now.
Yeah.
At each of these stages, like the village blacksmith, you saw the new something coming and says, I'll deal with this later. There's one car in this town, who cares? But we're at the point where there's more than one car in the new town. And we are transforming from a world where everybody's walking around with handsets to a world where everybody is going to have much more powerful and immersive devices, and they will be headsets.
Yeah.
That's our story. We're sticking with it. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, one of the questions was what are other must-reads apart from Fourth Transformation for business and soft skills? One of them is this Ultimate Guide. I put this in the show notes underneath the slides that you're viewing, and there's others as well. There's a whole bunch of links in this slide deck, so go through that and read some of them and watch some of the videos. And then Shell has a newsletter that he publishes, every couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's called, actually you are now subscribers because I gave you a subscription when you joined, I believe.
Yeah.
If not, let me know if you're not getting it. There hasn't been one because I was working so hard on this class, but thank you for the plug, Robert. As far as books go, there have been very few other books on this subject, which is a good business situation for us, but they will be coming, and I imagine the next year you'll see a lot. There are many, many articles. A simple Google search will get you going. As far as new products go, follow Robert Scoble. No one's up to him. Follow Irina Cronin. Follow TechCrunch.
Yeah, on Facebook, I link to anybody who is publishing anything interesting in this space. Facebook.com/Robert Scoble. Let's see.
There's 2 questions here.
Yeah. Yulia asks, is there a way to easily scan real-life 3D objects to use as overlays? Yes, there is. There's several apps on the iPhone, and you just give me a homework project. I'm going to try several of the apps to figure out which one is the best to use. To make it really great, you need to be a little bit good at editing polygons and taking things into tools and working with them, whether they be Autodesk software or others. So I'll put together maybe a newsletter or a blog or something that Shell can send out.
Josh, you say you didn't get the subscription. Can you CC Carolyn and email that to me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thanks for the plug, Bill.
And let's see, any monetization ideas for consumer AR apps? I'm really shocked nobody has shipped any drinking games yet, because if you think about ARKit and ARCore, they're really good on tables. And where are a lot of people bored on tables? Well, at bars and restaurants. I am shocked that we haven't seen an alcohol company yet do some games that you would play.
You are hearing this, I might add, from a member of AA who has been clean and sober for how many hours?
Almost 3 years.
3 years, yeah. Craig's got an interesting question. Updates, I think the update on Google Tango is that well, first of all, it's now called Tango. They get mad at you if you call it Google Tango.
Yeah.
But I think ARCore is the upshot of Google Tango.
For people who don't know what Google Tango is, it was a platform done by Google, which included some 3D sensors in a new phone from Lenovo and Asus.
Fab Phone 2.
Yeah, and an Asus one. They didn't sell very many because that phone was really big, and the use cases just weren't there put together. And Google just did a horrible job of marketing it.
Well,
and Tango is I'm hearing that Tango is not being pushed very hard by Google, but I think we're going to hear an update on October 4th. Google has a major announcement about the Pixel 2, which does not have 3D sensors as far as I know. So we're going to hear an update of what Google's vision is around AR in just a couple of days, right? That's October 4th. It's like 2 days from now. So we're going to all meet again there.
Thank you, Sylvie.
Yeah. What are the best glasses for AR supported maintenance? That's Simon. That goes back to the original slides. Do you just need information to be displayed to your users, or do you need it to be overlaid? Like, do you need to be able to see a CAD drawing overlaid on top of a machine like Reflect is doing? Then you need a HoloLens. If you're just seeing information, then you can see lighter weight glasses, which will last longer battery and be cheaper. But this is the problem right now. We don't have a good answer to you.
You should look at all of these as different tools. If you're going to build a house, you're going to need a bunch of different tools. Telling you need a hammer doesn't tell you enough. You need one with a certain heft to hit the big nails. And if you're doing finishing nails, you need a smaller hammer. So it's not possible. That's like saying, what sort of vehicle should I drive? And you fail to mention that you're going to long haul heavy equipment. You got to know the purpose to pick the tool. And Robert's first section was an effort for you to understand there's a variety of tools and give you some sense of which ones you should consider for what task you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you want to do follow-ups on that, you can get in touch with both of us too.
Yeah.
Maybe take a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Aisha is asking about WebVR. We covered WebAR a little bit, and it's a sister of WebVR. WebVR is coming along, but it doesn't give you the polygon counts that, for instance, an app running on Oculus Rift or HTC Vive does, and that's why you're not seeing it. That's why you're not seeing it really used heavily. But it does let developers do things in a lightweight way that's pretty cool, and it's certainly something that I would consider, particularly for lightweight VR. And then if you look at web AR, lightweight AR tasks, if you don't need to do an app, do it in the web, because it's a lot easier to distribute the web AR functionality or web VR functionality than it is to create an app and get it into an app store and all that, and get people to download, right? It's hard to get people to download things,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
Dipti asked a question about tools, and you covered this early. And there are tools other than Unity 3D which don't require coding. And you covered that earlier a little bit.
I did. Beyond is one, and Spatial Stories is another. I included the links in the early part of the slide deck. So, yeah. Do you need glasses for web VR? For VR, to be immersed in it, you need glasses. Are you? Now we get into a weird question. Are you just showing your viewer a 360 video? Well, you can do that on Facebook on a web browser. You don't need even web VR, right? Almost always, though, when you're talking to me about VR or AR, I'm thinking about being immersed. I'm thinking about something on my face to get the full experience of it. And for that, you need glasses, or you need a way to put your phone into a headset like Google Daydream. And we're probably going to hear a lot more about that in 2 days at Google's information announcements. Anything else?
And it looks like that's all the questions we have.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
we
you.
had fun.
Yeah.
We hope this was useful and interesting.
And please keep in touch and let us know if we can do this any way better for you, or if there's any unmet expectations.
We're sending them a survey, or we have sent it
As soon
already.
as soon as you log out, you'll be asked to do an evaluation. You'll be emailed that tomorrow, and we will be sending out a recording of this session to all who attended today. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.